All right, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. My name is Len Lonzi. I'm the Managing Director of the Preccelerator program here at Stubbs Alderton Marketlease. We're a full-service law firm located in Sherman Oaks, California, and our Preccelerator offices are located in Santa Monica. And today, I'm happy to have one of our mentors talk to us about sales. And I think this is a topic that sometimes gets overlooked because people at very early stage startups are building their MVP, they're getting their tech done, they're trying to raise money. But at the end of the day, if they have no way or understanding of how to do sales, they're going to be dead in the water. And today we have an expert in this area who's going to help us understand sales and sales strategy and how to prepare and build that. Hopefully, Carrie, you're able to cover those things as we discussed. And I'm not going to go into your bio very deeply. I think I'll let you cover that yourself. And for those of you, some Zoom hints and Zoom tricks. If you pin the person that's speaking, that way their tile stays front and center. And if you go to speaker view, that will keep them there. And Carrie, if you need to share your screen, you're able to do that. So you have the technical ability to do that. And with that, it's my pleasure to introduce Carrie Lauby.
Thank you. I'll start with a little bit about my background, just to give everyone an idea, and then we'll get into the presentation side of it. I come from decades of B2B to C, SaaS primarily. The first company founded and then was a digital marketing company right back when digital marketing was first starting online. And that was in the travel industry. And that was based on email marketing. And it was a win-win for, partners like Carnival Cruise Lines and travel agents to be able to use past traveler history to drill down and actually market to people based on where they've gone in the past, based on their buying behavior. And so then the second company I founded and grew out was the largest streaming music company for businesses, Cloud Cover Music. And after that venture, I moved on to basically become a consultant like I do today. And I, then partnered up with the Preccelerator. And really what my aim for all of us today is to take a look at what is a healthy approach to sales as a whole. What are some of the elements that you need in in having a good sales process, and what are essentials, if you will. And then the last and most important thing, my goal is not to overwhelm you with everything I'm going to lay out. All right. As with growing any company and bootstrapping, which I have done, it takes baby steps. It is small steps moving forward, setting small goals that are attainable in front of you, reaching that goal, and then asking yourself, what is next? What is the most critical, important thing that's going to move the needle for the next, I'll say, 3 months? So as we go through this, I want you to absorb everything here. I do ask that this is a participatory type of, interaction. And what I will do at some times is stop and ask everyone to type things into chat and just share what your perspective is based on your business, based on what you've seen, happen in the last year now. Trying to bring in clients, bring in new business, or get business from existing clients during COVID. So there won't be much of this that is, I'll say, altered specifically for COVID times, because I'll almost say what we're in now is the new normal. And I can talk a little bit about some ways of thinking from a sales reporting standpoint, or dollar volumes, that the companies I work with have made some pretty big shifts, I'll say, in the last 2 years. But, we'll get started here, and please participate, and absolutely no judgment. We are all at different places in our own growth and at different business models. And some of us have lots of staff, some of us have no staff, and we're one person trying to build this out. So just, be honest, and hopefully everyone here will be able to learn from everyone else and or feel, gosh, I'm not alone, right? Because it's a journey. So let's go ahead and get started here to share my screen. All right, so the title of this was, sales strategy, building traction. What I decided to do for this class is to, like I mentioned, really give that larger overview of sales structure and what is needed. And this is a couple of different kinds of presentations that I've done, but I think it's important for right now where business culture is. Depending on your business model, whether you're a product or service, you've had different challenges in trying to get in front of prospects and get in front of existing clients and try and retain your existing client base over the last year. And I think that both product and service have a plethora of new challenges that did not exist before. And what we're going to focus on today are 3 overarching concepts. And the first one is, in order to sell well, you got to have the right messaging. I'm going to talk a little bit about why people buy, and I want you to think about your product or service and the language that you've been using to talk to new prospects, or the language that you've been using to talk about what you're trying to, get out into the world. Some of you, as I noticed in the chat, are in a perspective where you're in a need creation sort of place. So there's kind of there's two perspectives when you're looking at going out and selling something. You're either in a space of demand fulfillment, which basically means that there is a demand for your product or service out in the market, and your job is to go out and be the best of all of them out there for whatever you do, and to fulfill, right, the orders or the requests or, the projects as they come in. All right. So demand fulfillment actually means that you're in a situation where you're selling something that people already know what it is. They understand conceptually your product service is about. And so therefore it's more a conversation about how you do it better. How are you different? What are you adding to the offering in comparison to your competitors? Okay, so that's demand fulfillment. Now, some of you are also in a place of need creation. And what that means is that you're going out into the market and you are having to create a need for your product or service. Now, as we're going to get into messaging, you're going to realize, well, we know you're not really creating a need. You're solving some problems or some pains. However, what you need to do is you're going out there with a product or service that no one really has seen before. Something in the market that is packaged, presented, done in a certain way that typically your prospects don't necessarily recognize it. And so when you're selling something that's need creation, you're in a position where you have to, present it in a way and have certain kinds of conversations around what you're trying to do so that people then latch onto your vision. They latch on to your evangelism, if you will, for your passion, and they conceptually get and understand and then find value in what you're creating and what you're selling. So again, the two are demand fulfillment or need creation. And so what I would like for you to do is type into chat now, which are you? Because I'll let you know, most products or services, most companies, if you say you're both, you're doing too much. So Yeah, you may have a product that's been to fulfillment, and then now you're launching a second side product that's maybe need creation that no one understands is in the market, and I can respect that. But go ahead and type into chat what, are you demand fulfillment or are you need creation?
Don't be shy, folks.
I knew we had both in here because of how you described your businesses.
Interesting.
We got a little more demand and, okay, someone says they're both, okay. So we've got a pretty good healthy mix, I think, of both. So here's the surprise. Whether you have sales staff or you don't have sales staff, once you start growing and you need to hire those sales staff, you actually need different people depending on which one of these two you are. So in sales, when we talk about recruiting and hiring and profiling and trying to build out your team, you need different kinds of people. Sell very differently, that have different passions, different drivers, if you will, what drives the individuals based on whether you're a need creation or whether you're a demand fulfillment. So, all right, so we're going to talk about the messaging here, and then we're going to get into the sales process. And then lastly, we're going to talk about metrics. Metrics are oh so important. And without metrics, without something to measure whether what we're doing is being successful or not, we will have no idea whether our conversions are doing what they need to do. So I like to think of sales and selling as essentially, people can be born with the gift of gab. They can be born with the gift of, talking to people. I'm sure everyone's heard you can sell ice to an Eskimo. Some people are born with this gift of being able to talk and bond with people. However, sales skills and sales professionalism is learned behavior. Even the best people who have the gift of gab, guarantee you, have to learn how to sell and how to qualify. And some people float just on their gift and they never get any kind of training. True sales professionals, it is something they're born with. So that's good news for all of us, because most of us, we just are not innately salespeople. All right. It's not something we wanted to be. It's not something we really wanted to do. We ended up with a passion for something, and now we're running this company or we're starting this project, and we really had no idea that now we have to sell stuff. All right. Okay, so let's get into the messaging side. And what do we mean when we talk about messaging? Well, what we want to look at are who is our audience. First, we need to understand why they buy and what their drivers are, right? What's driving our audience? And then we need to look at what are our industry verticals? Who are we actually going after? And for those of you that are early on in the journey, I even want you to apply these concepts to your beta groups, okay? So if you were at a point where you are trying to test out product and you need to form a group of people in order to test out product, the principles we're talking about right now need to apply to your beta group in order, or groups, plural, in order for you to have a good, solid test in the marketplace and know that the product or service that you're building is going to truly solve the problems that are happening out there, and that it's going to be marketable and that it will scale on its own. So let's take a look at messaging. Well, why do people buy? Well, the reality is that people don't buy for your reasons. They buy for their own. And it's the salesperson's job to understand what their perspective is. In other words, what kind of lenses am I seeing the world through as the prospect or the suspect? How do I view my own situation? And so without empathy and without having a true understanding of what's going on in your prospect's world, your product or service will be disconnected where you think it's going to go. So lots of time I consult with companies who have really amazing products or services, and they saw an opportunity in the market and they built something. And sometimes they built it because it was their idea and they thought it was needed. And it seemed like a good idea, and someone else sponsored them, and they put all the money into the idea, and they get out into the market, and suddenly they realize that the sales aren't really where they thought they were going to come from. Okay? Or the sales really aren't happening in the way that they thought it was going to happen. Or the people that are buying their product is not the demographic that they, assumed were buy the product. When these disconnections happen with products and services out in the market, the disconnect doesn't start at that point. The disconnect really started in the development stage of the idea for the product or service. And the reason the disconnect started is that they didn't start from the right perspective. So, basically what we're looking at are people are buying for their own reasons, and they're buying because they are experiencing something emotionally and not something intellectually. So people buy emotionally, they make decisions intellectually. So if you think about the last thing that you bought, I want you to think about why you bought it, not necessarily because of the features and benefits. There's a reason you bought it in the first place, whatever it is, whether it's TV, whether it's, some really good food. There's a reason you bought it, an emotional reason you bought it. And then the features and benefits and the brand and where you got it, those actually are all second level decisions from an intellectual point of view. So there are four main emotional reasons why people buy. And it's important to understand this product or service. So the first one is pain in the present. Pain in the present means that your prospect or suspect is experiencing something right now in their business that is happening to them that is so difficult. It's causing difficulty in the company that they need to pick the phone, go on Google, do a search to try and find a solution. They just solve it, okay? And so they're experiencing pain in the present. And that pain, whether it is financial pain affecting their job, whether it's making them look bad in their job, whether the company isn't doing well financially because something isn't functioning, whether it's a loss of time, money, or effort, right? Or people, labor, all those things that may happen as far as pain go, they're experiencing that in the present, right? So that's first reason why people may buy. The second reason is pain in the future, right? So lots of companies come to me and they say, we developed this product because this person could be in this really horrible situation in the future. And in order to prevent that, they're going to buy our product or service as a preventative thing. They're going to want to take care of it now rather than be in that situation later on. Well, there's a catch to pain in the future. And the catch is the person that's buying has to believe that the end state of being in that bad situation needs to be unavoidable and also needs to happen at any point in time, meaning it can happen tomorrow. If that individual does not believe that that can happen tomorrow and that it is unavoidable for them, then they have no driver, no impetus to solve their pain today and buy from you. It may be a wish, it may be a nice to have, but they're a long ways away from pulling the trigger on actually converting into a client. So, pain in the future. Your product needs to believe it's going to happen tomorrow and it's completely unavoidable. Pleasure in the present. Pleasure. So pleasure, people usually buy only products or services that are around entertainment, food, things that are completely luxurious and pleasurable. That's where pleasure in the present applies to. If you have a B2B type business, typically you're selling pleasure in the present. You're not selling on something that is pleasure in the present, right? You're going to look at pain in the present. And the last one is pleasure in the future. So a lot of companies will develop their messaging for their product or service around what a fantastic job we did for all these clients. You are going to have such an amazing experience with our software. Once you're engaged with us, look at all these things we're going to do for you. You're going to be so well taken care of. That's why you want to buy. The reality is that's not actually why people buy. People will only buy for pleasure in the future if they have a client of yours. So in other words, they have to have had a good experience with you in the past in order to come back and know that they're going to have pleasure in the future, and therefore that is their emotion for buying from you a second time. So think of this in the context of brands. We all have clothing brands or shoe brands or car brands that you've bought, and then you buy the brand again. That is buying for pleasure in the future. People don't buy B2B or even B2C for the most part, unless it's, around this, unless they bought it in the past. They're not going to buy it anticipating they're going to have a great experience with you in the future. So from a sales standpoint and talking about it, you don't want to have messaging around what a great experience you're going to have, because it doesn't mean anything. It's not going to get them emotionally over the pull the trigger to engage with you. So those are the 4 reasons why people buy. And so really looking at what we're looking for when we talk about messaging is we're looking at what are the pains or problems that your clients are experiencing now in their day-to-day that would inspire them to want to solve it by engaging with your product or service. So what I'd like everyone to do is type into the chat a pain or a problem that your prospect is experiencing, and therefore they would need your product or service.
Don't be shy.
Okay.
I'm going to provide
some feedback, and this is all in the guise of learning. This is all for our learning purposes. Some of you put things in here, but I don't see any pain. I don't see a problem that someone's in. I see a situation, but I don't see a pain. I don't see a problem that someone's in. So I'll give you a good example. This is kind of funny here. All right, let me give you an example. Okay, Dr. Barr put in knowing when their pet is in pain. So that's not a pain that the individual is having. That's something that they, that you may like for them to know about your product or service. So the pain that the individual is having is that individual is observing things in their pet and wondering whether their pet is in pain or not. They're in a state of unknowing. And that unknowing is so uncomfortable for them that they want to solve it. So the real pain is that the person's in that state of unknowing and it feels uncomfortable to them. Okay. Peter wrote, comfortable and personalized clothes with a fun vibe. What I'd like you to think about is switch your thinking, Peter. What's going on in the prospect? What aren't they able to find in their ecosystem, their world, and their shopping and their friends? What aren't they able to have or put on their body, that makes them want to, go for your brand? So think about maybe clothes that they're wearing that aren't comfortable, feeling uncomfortable in their clothes, or feeling like it doesn't truly represent who they are, not being able to find something that they connect with from a self-expression standpoint. That's the pain that the client is in. Okay, so good examples. And monetary loss is their pain. Yeah. Monetary loss is a good one, although it's only going to get you so far. All right, so let's talk about messaging. So we have some pain points. We have the perspective of what's happening in our prospects level. So here's the thing. When you look at marketing versus sales, 100% of the time they get confused. Meaning, sometimes you think marketing is actually, and it's not. So marketing applies to targeted and customized. It applies to all kinds of platforms that you may take your message across. It's going to apply to, are your emails all aligned in your messaging? Are your presentations aligned in your messaging? And is your customer support or customer success team aligned in their messaging? The messages that you use to present your solution to the prospect's problem is actually all marketing. Sales' job, once the conversation starts with the prospect, to qualify, does this person that I'm talking to have this pain? So I'll use our two examples. If the person that the Dr. Barr is talking to does not have an uncomfortable feeling that they don't know if their pet is in pain or not, if that person is not significantly uncomfortable, then they're not going to be engaged enough to sign up for her product or service. So it's essential from a conversational standpoint that as a salesperson, Dr. Barr start to understand when she's talking to people, gosh, what's really happening? What are you thinking? How are you feeling about your pet? And so it's the salesperson's job to get the prospect to talk about their pain, to get them to talk about their problem. So when we look at a sales team or our selling methodology, we want to figure out whether we're using uniform language, a presentation. If you have a sales team, is everyone bought in and is everyone selling the same way with the same language? One of the big mistakes I see with startups is that they have a sales team of 2 or 3 people and they kind of let the people run wild, and they'll each have different methodologies and they're saying different things and selling things different ways. And then you have no way of measuring what really works for your product or service. So recommendations overall on the marketing or messaging side of things is to audit your sales team and audit your calls, emails, and proposals. If you have a team that's doing the work for you, you need to at least twice a year look over what they're sending out, what is your messaging, and ensure that what you believe, the problem that you're solving for your prospect, is being carried out in the presentations, emails, and messaging that your team or that your other partners are actually communicating in the same way. What a lot of companies in startup mode fail to do is, so I know how difficult it is, but what they fail to do is they fail to hit the pause button and have this kind of a meeting around messaging. And that's why I have this in here at the start, because it's important. If everyone is doing something different, you will not be able to measure your success, and therefore you will not be able to scale in the way that you're looking to scale. Okay, so run an audit 2 times a year of what your messaging is and make sure that it's all consistent across the board. So now we're going to take a look at process. Now, process is really what is our sales process going to be? What are the steps that we need to take the prospect through in order for them to qualify as being our client? So let's talk about what that actually looks like. Because when you are handing off a marketing standpoint, so you have your marketing messaging and then they're handing it off to the sales team, okay? So that handoff point is right when you start the conversation with the prospect. Everything that happens prior to the conversation is the marketing. Once you start the conversation with the prospect, I don't care if it's chat, I don't care if it's email, I don't care if it's physical, Zoom or phone calls. Once you start a conversation, you're now in a sales process. Okay? So on the marketing side, they're going to have MQLs, intent data, source data about the prospect. You may have already set up, some, key information that you want to include about your prospect when it comes in from whatever marketing sources you're using. Some of you are probably using some outside companies to help with your SEO and with your lead generation. When you receive the leads, you should have some kind of information about your prospect, what the behaviors the prospect has done on the website, what kind of information do you know about this prospect before you start the conversation, right, when the handoff occurs. Now, when the handoff occurs over to your sales team, what we're looking for is even distribution of the team. If you have a number of people, process handling, documentation, starting with bonding and rapport. How are you going to bond and rapport with this client or this prospect that's being handed over to you in whatever form you get it? You want to ask yourself, how am I going to start that conversation with someone on chat if you're using a chat bot? How are we going to start that conversation with someone in email? How am I going to start that conversation if it's, someone's up for an appointment on my calendar and it's a 10-minute discovery call? And all of those points need to be consistent. That's the key. Because if you're handling interactions with your prospect all differently, you will not be able to measure your success and you will not be able to measure your messaging, what you're doing in your sales process. Now, what if you're handing it off to online sales? Let's say you're running a bunch of advertisements online and then it's passing off to an online sales process where maybe they're buying on their own. Well, you still have all the data and you have some engagement frequency, but then on the online side, you're going to then use some different tools to try and find out what is your client doing online while they're shopping on your site, right? And this is where you'll get to some A/B testing and using some heat bots or some AI tools to really see what kind of behavior is happening when they land on your site to make a purchase. So the key here is making sure that you are, watching all this and that you are then tweaking it and improving on it. So let's talk a little bit about personal impact. Now, when we talk about sales process, everyone has an idea of sales process that's different. So what I'd like for you to do is I'd like for you to put into the chat what you're doing in your process that you think works. One thing you're doing right now that you've done in the last month when you've engaged with prospects that you think is successful. And then I would like for you to list one thing that you think in your process, in your world that you're selling isn't working how you exactly want it to. Meaning you've tried some things, but the results haven't been exactly how you want it to, or you're at real early stages of startup and you know you need to figure that out, but you really have no idea how to get started. We've got Facebook ads, we've got product one-pagers, one sheets. What is working for some of the rest of you? Okay, getting kind of testimonials lined up. Great, you've got the customer success. Once they become a client, you're able to handle everything really well. Okay, now what's not working so good? Yeah, trying to get a little decision makers, not being able to speed up the sales cycle. In-store visits, okay. We all have different things. So what else is not working? Yeah, aligning sales team to the goals, to achieve goals. Yeah. So a lot of these are so common in the not working well or the common sales challenges area. Okay, so here is the, process. Think about sales. You need to have a process that your prospect is going to go through in order for them to pass through and qualify the gates that they need to so that you can close business. And if you have not outlined what your sales process is, meaning if you just have a bunch of evangelists out there talking about it, and then you know that once they get to a certain stage in their conversations and the person's willing to go into maybe some kind of demo, or can we show you something, or can we try, maybe it's a trial, and then once they're in trial, what happens after that? And so really what you need to do in the process step, is you need to make sure that you have clearly outlined for your team and yourself, what is the process that you are going to go through with a potential prospect to close business. And in today's world with Zoom, in today's world with everyone short on time, most of the clients I work with end up with a process that looks something like 10-minute discovery. And then if there are any clear next steps, which would be a call or being on the calendar, then we're going to the next stage. And that next stage could very well be a demo. It could be a meeting with the next decision maker. It could be a more detailed meeting to really start to understand what their problem is. And then usually after that point, there may be one or two other steps in the process. And depending on your product or service, it may be a trial, it may be a small project that you're something they get for free and then you try and convert them afterwards, okay? But typically The entire sales process is no longer than 5 steps. So usually it's a 10-minute engagement, and then it's the next step and next step. And by that point, we should be at decision-making time. Now, I say that, and that sounds easy, 5 steps, less than 5 steps. But the reality is we all have different products or services. And, you know, expediting sales cycles, John shared. So your process getting from step A, you know, to that 5th step could have all different lengths of time, okay, depending on whether you're selling to enterprise, you know, and what kind of product or service you're selling. But if you can't name in clarity what those steps are, and then have consistent messaging, consistent presentations, consistent emails across your team for each stage of those steps, then you won't be able to measure what's working and what's not working, and you won't be able to change something and then see if it has a measurable effect on converting more. So here's where video comes into play. And everyone is using video in the sales process now. If you're not, I'm going to encourage you to give it a go. And it doesn't have to be perfect. It has to be you. It has to be genuine and authentic. These are platforms that you can sign up for that are free. And you can record evergreen and individual videos for prospects in order to get them to engage. So that's the whole purpose of our marketing. Well, the purpose of marketing or messaging is to get the client to either go on the site and buy something if you're all online, or get the client to conversation with you, right? That's it. It is to get the client to the next clear step. And using video drastically increases your conversion rate around that.
Nice.
So here you can see the 2 platforms. There's a few differences in these. If you have if you have a software solution, Loom tends a little better because you actually screen share and show something on the software while you're talking to them. So you can kind of run a mini demo in a minute-long video and, you know, visual of what your software looks like online. But I would encourage you to use both of these. Now, there are 2 kinds of videos that people use in selling today. And one of them is a personal one-to-one video. And so that is where you would create a video of yourself talking to your prospect. I also will tell you that this process works wonders with investors. So if you are trying to recruit, or you are trying to get access to some investor or some you've been trying to follow around and get in the right room with, record a video of yourself talking to an investor and then send it to them via email, and make sure that they know in your copy and mail, you know, this is a personal video, you know, with a couple of bullet points, and that will get you in front of them. So personal videos, they're used for prospecting. Did Len want to add something?
Yeah, I'm sorry, can I ask a quick question? The
Sure.
length of videos, it seems to be an issue as to how long the video should be, and what is the attention span of the person that you're communicating to. And you know, I come from the school of thought, the briefer the better, and try to keep it under 2 minutes.
Yes.
But then you see people doing 8 and 10-minute videos, and you know, I barely get through the introduction and turn it off.
2 minutes or less.
So 120 seconds or less.
Definitely.
Yeah.
You
and even shorter if you can do it.
You go over 2 minutes, you've gone too long. Because what's the point of the video?
Get their
interest. The point
interest.
of the video isn't, it's not to get your message across.
It's to get them to ask more questions and want to talk to you.
Exactly. That's the whole point of the video.
It's a teaser.
Okay.
Sorry to
So,
interrupt, but I just wanted to
oh,
point that
I
out.
appreciate it.
Yeah, because I think people get all energized by putting a video together and have a production company and want to spend a lot of money, and all of a sudden, no, put your iPhone in front of you and do a couple of takes and get it down to where it looks good, and then get it out. It doesn't have to be overproduced, because then it doesn't look authentic.
It doesn't look authentic. And even in today's world, I 100% agree with you. And you have to think of it that you want to say just enough to give them a sense of who you are, or to give them a something relational on an emotional level, right? And you want to say just enough then to take it to that next step. And so you definitely don't want to try and get your message across in the video, if that makes any sense. This isn't a one-way communication tool.
It makes a ton of sense. And as I think about application, even here at the Preccelerator, for the companies that are on the call this afternoon who are part of the Preccelerator, be prepared for our next accountability meeting to have your sales video, less than 2 minutes, to present to the group.
Yep. So here's the thing. There are two kinds of videos you're going to do. Personal. On the personal side, that's a one-to-one prospecting thing, or a video you create for a potential investor. That's personal. Client annual reviews. Create a small video saying, hey, it's Carrie, I haven't reviewed your account in 6 months. I'd love to sit down and have a meeting with you and go over this, this, and this. Let me know a good time. That's it. I mean, that was like 20 seconds, but it's a personal message that will get them to create that meeting in your calendar and commit to a time of when the two of you are going to get together. Upselling and cross-selling. If you have existing clients and you're trying to adapt to a new platform, you have existing clients and you're trying to sell them a new service that you've come out with, create a personal video. Hey, you're a great client with this. We've come out with this second thing, and we think that it would be interesting for you to try it. I'd really love to have your feedback. Let me know if you're open. Okay. So those are personal one-to-one videos, and the conversion ratios are very high. So that kind of video that you see on the right-hand side is what we call evergreens. And evergreen is where you're going to create a video that you are then going to send that one video to multiple people. So it's not a one-to-one ratio. It's a one to multiple people ratio. And so this could be used oftentimes for, client quarterly updates about your business, or maybe your software came out with some new features and someone is going to create a small video to show some of those. And then you're going to send it to your existing client base. It's great for using in your marketing campaigns, or how to do this, or did you know, right? So I can think of a good one for Dr. Barr with, pets being in pain. Did you know that pets don't usually show when they're in pain, or 80% of pets don't show when they're in pain? And then you can talk about a couple of points around that in this evergreen video. And so that's what we call evergreen videos. So there are two different kinds. I'd like to encourage you in your business to create both. And they are used for different situations, right? Different things. So when you're, when you're hunting the whales and going after those big accounts that you want, or the big person that you need, or the tentpole client you need to secure, don't give them an evergreen video. Give them a personal video. Here goes, Len, this led right into it. Best practices, less than 2 minutes. Identify yourself. Summary up front. Have a message body. So just like we just talked about sales process, and you need to know what your sales process is, you need to have a format for your videos. And here's how it works. Okay. Hey, this is Carrie with Boost Performance. I just wanted to reach out and talk to you about your sales numbers and also the new hire that you're going to have. I've got a couple of points. Let's go ahead and get started. All right. And then you go into point 1, and then you go into point 2, and then you wrap it up with a clear call to action. So a clear call to action at the end is going to be a call or a meeting on your calendar.
And I will add here, script it out, write it out first. Don't try and do this serendipitously. Really write out the text, practice it, and then do it on video. It'll just make your life so much easier.
Yep, 100%. We write out scripts, even if it's just 3 sentences. I just edited some for a client the other day. Right? And these are evergreen videos that are going to go in a marketing cadence that we're sending. But yep. And so the whole point of giving the overarching bullets, the kind of summary up front, here's what I'm going to cover in these 2 minutes. I'm going to cover this and this and this and this. Okay, great. Now let's get started. The reason you give them the high level overview in the beginning is so they'll stick around to the end, right? It gives them that foreshadowing of what's going to happen in the rest of the video. Right? And so your chances of them sticking around to the end of your message is much higher. Whereas if you don't give them any kind of agenda in your message, a lot of people will start watching and say, oh, okay, yeah, I got you. I know who you are. And they'll just end the content. And then you miss the impact of where you're trying to go. And don't be perfect. Nobody is. All right, so here are your options for sending out video. We've got email, and we've got social media for your evergreens, right? So you can post these things on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, do evergreen videos about things that you're passionate about, do evergreen videos about, you know, some of those pains that we just posted in here. You can turn that pain into an evergreen video about, you may be experiencing this, or we find that a lot of our clients are experiencing this out in the world and they were really struggling. And because of that, we created blank. Okay, because of that, we created this. So use third-party stories, right? Our clients were experiencing this, or people were experiencing this, and because of that, we created that. Another way to say that is clients come to us because. Clients come to me because they are struggling and in pain and pain and pain and pain. And by working with them, we were able to do X, Y, and Z. Okay, so that's the third party message that you want to encompass into an evergreen situation or a story. All right, decision making. Well, this slide is really just about qualifying the decision-making process. And I think it was John. You're one of my favorites today. You also talked about your team getting to decision makers. Well, I want to encourage all of you to make sure that you are qualifying the decision-making process very early and way up front in your conversations with your prospects. And by that, I don't only mean who is the decision maker. What I also mean is, what is their timeline for making a decision? When are they planning on doing something to solve the pain or problem that they found themselves in? How do they make decisions? That's a whole other landmine, right? How does your business, how does your team, how does your C-suite decide on which company they're going to invest in? What does that process look like? How long did it take last time you had to make a decision? Right? So, you know, finding out how they make decisions, when their timeline is going to be, and who is going to be involved is super important in your sales process. I like to break it down into too many companies don't have a decision-making process. I'm going to counter argue that they do. Everyone does. And it's our job as salespeople to ask the right questions to get them to unveil that, to reveal that to us. Okay? If they're not being forthcoming about answering our questions or having a dialogue around, you know, how are they going to make that decision, then they're shopping you and they have absolutely no intention of buying. So a lot of the clients that I work with decide that, I'm just going to throw out some examples. I have a client right now where if their prospect does not have a timeline and they don't have a budget allocated, then they're going to continue the conversation. So for you, it could be that if they don't have a timeline, and if they, if they don't know when they're going to make the decision, and they don't know how they're going to make the decision, then it's just probably way too early for you to be spending your time talking to them. It's just too early, too premature. And what you'll find is when you figure out what you don't want, and then you serve that back to the prospect, and this is what it sounds like. Gosh, I'm hearing that you don't really know how you're going to make this decision. And because of that, I'm thinking maybe it's just a little too early for us to be talking. What do you think? And what you will find is that the people who self-select and say, yeah, it probably is too early. Yeah, I really am really not clear on what I want. Then they're going to disqualify themselves. And that's a good thing for you, because the least amount of time that you need to be spending with people who don't have any real understanding of what they're trying to do or figure out or solve, that just means that was not a qualified prospect in the first place.
If I could jump in, another way to look at this is, and this is from a sales training I went to years and years ago, sell for the no. Ask for the no. Give permission for them to say, no, I'm not interested. And let them disqualify themselves so you can get out of there and get on to the next person, because it really becomes a numbers game in many cases. And many startups have lots of different types of prospects out there. Don't waste your time trying to sell to people that don't want it.
Yeah. So there are, we'll call, you can group the decision makers into these different categories. So you have a decision maker, you have an influencer, okay? And an influencer, an example of that is someone who has the ability to veto the purchase. So decision makers, influencers, and then you have what we'll call end users. Okay? Sometimes quorum of end users will actually destroy your sale. So let me give you an example. I'm selling some kind of service that the employees need to actually try it out. Okay, let's say it's a cash register software. And the employees actually need to use the registry software, and they need to experience it and see how easy it is for the software to be trained and used in live time. The decision maker that I'm talking to really loves the software. They think it's fantastic, and they're all, for it. And they're going to go out and they're going to trial in locations of their software. Well, a inexperienced salesperson would say, fantastic, I'm so excited. The decision maker loves it. We're going to close this deal and let's go run this trial. An experienced salesperson would qualify that decision maker harder. Because if you don't understand what a successful trial means to that decision maker, you should know what a trial in the first place. So we want that decision maker to say to us, a successful trial is if the employees really like the software and if they find it easy to use. And before you go to trial, you're going to say, well, let's pretend. Let's pretend that the employees really like it and it's really easy to use. What happened next? And then that decision maker is going to say, well, I need to take the thing up to the next chain because, I'm just bringing an idea to somebody. I don't really have the power to sign up for the software. What did we just learn? We just learned that he's not really the decision maker. So you've got to qualify hard when you are taking things to the next stage and really understand what is important to the people that you're talking to, right? In this case, If you could ask the opposite question. Well, what would happen if all the employees didn't really like the software and they kind of struggled with it, and maybe just, they weren't able to pick it up? And then the decision maker could tell you, well, my gosh, if that happens, then there's no way I'm going forward with this. Or the decision maker could say, you know what, I don't really care because they don't get stuff anyway. They never get it the first time. Okay, great. Then what would a successful trial mean to you? We still don't know. We still have to figure that out. Okay. So that's what I mean when I talk about qualifying hard. So we have decision maker, influencer, and we have dreamers. Dreamers are the ones that have this great idea, but that it's never really going to go anywhere. They have no real end power. We have end users, IT, procurement, CFO. Sometimes those are considered influencers. Sometimes the CFO has the right to veto the entire project. Sometimes purchasing, right? Procurement has the right to veto your entire sales effort. So it's important that you understand who all the players are in the decision-making process and be able to work with them and have conversations and address that. So disqualification, that's what I've been talking about. Actually, selling is not about selling them on our product or service. It is even more so about disqualifying them, right? And getting them to disqualify themselves. So we want to be able to deal with the right people. We want to shorten our sales cycle so we know exactly who we're talking to and why we're talking to them. And we want a realistic pipeline. We want to know that everyone that we're talking to in that conversational process has a timeline, and they're clear about what their timeline is for when they're going to solve their problem, when they're going to purchase your service or purchase someone else's. So now we're going to transfer. We're going to transfer our client from sales over to customer success, because our job isn't done. Sales is still responsible. We hand off that product or service and that client that we just started. We have to set up a good handoff process into the customer success department, because one of you commented you have a great customer success department working. That's fantastic, because a good one will be able to sell, cross-sell, get referrals, and actually be a revenue generating department for your company. True customer success, believe it or not, is actually sales. They just don't really know it. A little bit different profile of person. Okay, so here's my recommendations on the sales process side. Document it. Document what are the stages you take that prospect through in order to close business. Train everyone that's doing uniformly. If it's just you and a partner, you two need to be aligned on what that process is. Okay? You need to be aligned on these are the stages we're going to take someone through, and why, what logic, and what is our understanding of why it's important. Have consequences for non-conformance. This means if you have a team of people and someone chooses not to follow the process, what is the consequence to that salesperson? Don't let it slide. Run A/B testing in a controlled environment. Well, if you're controlling everything from the high level and you have that process, you can then run A/B testing. You can then say, well, what would happen if we gave them this kind of offer? Or the one I love is, what would happen if we gave it to them for free and then asked them to pay? Would give us more conversions? Well, you can't know the answer to that until you really have your sales process down. And then get marketing intelligence with question products. So process is important. Metrics. Metrics are the way that we measure our process, our results. The metrics are actually going to measure the results of all of these departments. So we're moving someone from a suspect to a prospect to a client, And then we're having interaction and a next step, and then moving them on to customer success. So here's my question, everyone, some marketing here. I'd like you to give an example of a marketing key performance indicator is in your world. Think of the marketing that you do. I saw Facebook ads. I'm sure a lot of other ways that people are marketing. What is a key performance indicator? Traffic. Number of people. Conversion rate. What conversion, John? We're talking marketing now, not sales. Demo conversion rate. That's actually a sales KPI, not marketing. Subscription to an email wait list. Yep, subscriptions, great. People are signing up, automated, increased engagement on the website. That goes back to traffic. Yep. So let's take a look at some common marketing KPIs. How many unique viewers do you have? How many online inquiries? How many chats do you have on your chat bot? What's the engagement process? How many clicks and how many conversions of those clicks into a clear next step, which starts your sales process? Okay, whatever that is, whatever that conversion point is. Organic traffic. How many emails are coming in? What's the open rate of those emails? How many appointments are made from the lead generation? How many downloads of white papers? Do you have automatic downloads? And then you need to define what intent means, what market, what intent, there's all sorts of definitions of intent from a marketing standpoint. But if you talk about your videos and you look at, well, if you put up an evergreen video and then you're going to go with marketing, right? Then what would a KPI be for your evergreen video? Well, one KPI could be how many views you had video, but then I would also love to know how long do people watch the video for on average, right? Where's your drop-off point in the video where you lose all your viewers? Second KPI. And then how many of those people that viewed it are uniques? How many people watched it more than once, right? What viewers did you actually get? Okay, sales KPIs. I'd like everybody to type into chat what they think a sales process or a sales KPI, a key performance indicator, looks like. What are the things that you need to do or measure in order to measure your sales? And I'm going to steal from Ron because he had demos, right? Demo conversions. So I'm assuming that means you're doing a demo and then you're wanting to, convert them. So if you have it down, X number of demos is going to give you X number of conversions. So the more demos you make, the more sales you're going to make. Volume, revenue, margins. That is more on operational business analytics side of things. Number of suspects and prospects. Okay, that is true. Yep. Customer acquisition. How many clients am I acquiring? To me, that's conversions. That's upsells. How many people are we converting? How many people are we upselling to? That's true. I mean, that's, again, just a general conversion. Calls, meetings, visits, demos, proposals, quotes, POs. How many NDAs are signed? How many channel partners do we have? How many RFIs or RFQs are we competing in? How many downloads of our sales document? So there's one theme through most of this. Is this about revenue or is this about behavior?
This is all behavior.
Yeah.
These are all
True
things
sales
to do.
metrics, true sales metrics, true sales KPIs are all based on behavior. If you do the behaviors, the sales will come. If you do the behaviors and you have a process and you measure it and you have the right messaging, the sales will come. If you don't do the behaviors, you're not going to get the sales, period. So true sales KPIs are all about behavior. They're not about, well, you may have goals, right, of bringing in X amount of revenue. But if you have X number of meetings or X number of calls or X number of proposals or quotes, you're never going to get there. You're not going to get there. So we actually focus very narrowly down on the behavioral side. So I want you to think about that. Yeah.
And that talks right back to what the definition of a KPI, right? Key performance indicators, right? If we're not talking about the revenues or the gross sales or whatever. We're talking about what are the performance indicators that you need to do in order to get there.
Yeah. Indicators that you are going to get the results that you're expecting from your effort. Yeah. Video metrics. Well, videos, like I just said, they have KPIs too, right? How many people opened your email, how many views, how many completed the views, how many clicks, how many appointments made from your call to action. What about customer success? What would be some KPIs for your customer success once somebody's a client? Go ahead and put some in chat. Testimonial, that. Referrals, yes. Ongoing revenue, yeah. MRR, monthly reoccurring rev. Mm-hmm. They give us time to resolve the issue. We have a relationship, they're accommodating. It's a two-way relationship.
They buy again.
They buy again. So here we go. Customer success metrics, response time, lifetime value, retention. How many referrals? There we have. Increased revenue, more licenses, more products, more seats, right? There's engagement in your marketing campaign. You have people who are fans that are regularly opening the content that you send out or that you post in all those different channels. They're attending your webinars. They're attending any kind of client appreciation or any kind of client side things that you're doing. They're engaging, right? They're engaging with your content. And you're able to measure your metrics by tickets, resolutions, problems that happen, how many are coming in and how many are getting resolved, and what your retention numbers are. So here is my recommendations when it comes to metrics and evaluations. Do not overinvest in tech. I can't say that more. So many startups and companies believe that they need the latest apps in order to run their business, and you don't. You need good process. You need good messaging, and you need metrics that you measure. How you do that and the tools you use to do that can be done very inexpensively in the beginning. Evaluate your metrics 4 times a year. If you can't easily track it, don't use it. It may be a great idea. It may be something for down the line, 6 months, a year from then. But if you can't easily track it, don't use it. It's not going to serve you and the business. You'll spend more time in trying to get your tracking mechanism than it's worth. You're going to lose traction, right, in getting your product out there. Let the numbers drive your product innovation. So in other words, let the buyer tell you where you need to innovate. Let the buyers tell you and your beta groups tell you what you need to do. And sometimes that's hard for founders to hear because you're so passionate about your idea and you believe in it and you love it so much. And you're going to have to let these beta groups and these other people, your buyer, tell you where you need to take it. And less is more. All right, we're back to 3 steps where we started. What can you do in the next 3 months? Pick one area and work on it and start small. So don't think that you can tackle messaging, process, metrics, all in the next 3 months. You want to pick small things within this. One thing. Just say, okay, let's really dial in on our messaging for the next 3 months. Let's really go out and talk to prospective clients and understand what their pains are. Let's figure out what language we're using then to present our product or service to those people. And then let's make sure that all of our messaging is consistent across all channels. That's an example of one thing in a small focus that's going to get you very far. All right, I'll stop talking now.
So do we have any questions? And I'm not going to moderate this unless you need me to. We have a small enough group right now, so if anybody would like to speak, speak up now. Any questions from anyone? Joseph and Bevs, do you guys have a sales process delineated at this point in time that everybody's on the same page on?
I love that you're able to just single me out. No, I'm just joking. No, we, you know, we're pretty new. We just added a couple sales members, some team members, and had been experiencing kind of a gap in terms of accountability to those KPIs that we had set, you know, a few weeks to month back. And so we recently had a restructuring in terms of being able to kind of get really clear with our structure, and, you know, Cody very well. And so it's been something that I'm excited to see moving forward, and, you know, just to continue to, you know, provide excellent service to, you know, our stores that we have, and feeling pretty good about it.
Absolutely. And just so everybody knows, I picked on Joseph on purpose. Bevs is one of our Preccelerator companies that's currently working with us. I'm very familiar with what they're doing, and I knew the answer to the question before I asked it. So I just wanted to use it as a good example of, you know, companies have to reevaluate this all the time. And as you add team members, and when it's just 1 or 2 people, process is cut short. You know, you cut the process short because it's in your head. You don't even think about process. So as I pick on John over at XP Health now, you know, right now his sales are him. And so he's got the process. But, you know, write it down, John, because as you bring people on, you're going to want to capture those things that work for you.
The other thing to note about process is that it's not going to work the same for all of your prospects. So, for example, you know, John may be selling to a single location. He may be selling to a large multi-location. His process, 2 different kinds of selling, are going to be slightly different. They should be. But what's important is when you go to all the single locations, you follow the same process. That's what's most important.
Great. Anybody else have any other questions as we come to the end of our hour and a half? Yeah, John, go for it.
A real brief question. We're kind of in that space where, you know, we're onboarding early adopters, and some of the concern for investors, you know, to de-risk the venture is that we have, you know, established sales channels or sales partners, for example, especially in healthcare, where if we're selling to, you know, a hospital or a medical facility, the sales cycle can be quite long. So I'm exploring partnering with medical sales consultants and medical sales reps. And I'm wondering whether you think it's too early for us to do that, and if you have any feedback or advice for doing so when we don't have much capital at the moment. Yeah.
In my experience, when you go to third-party reps to rep your service and then sell it, I think with the right training, they can effectively sell the product. The challenge that you're going to have is the handoff them and your company and onboarding expectations. What I often see happens with third-party relationships is that if you can't be real dialed in what kind of expectations that rep needs to set with the prospect about what they're buying and what they're going to get at the end of that. What I find is if it's at all loosey-goosey, the sale will happen, but then there'll be a disconnect in what the client thinks they're getting and what your company can actually deliver. And so you'll find struggles then on the conversion, you know, that conversion piece, that conversion point. And so that's the biggest danger or thing that I see out there with third parties.
Excellent.
You'll get the business, but it might be the kinds of clients you want, is
Right.
what I'm trying to say.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question. This is Joseph here. In terms of, you know, our business model, I came on probably 4 or 5 months ago, somewhere around there. And they had been in such a set mode of expansion and adding a lot of stores with, you know, a lot of ease, to be honest. But it was something now looking at scalability. There's concerns that, you know, I've seen in terms of the management of a lot of these retailers that we've been able to add. And so when you notice that you're kind of in a process, like a snowball effect almost. And do you think that it's worth it to sometimes hit the pause button to be able to reevaluate, pull back certain areas or stores that might not be working? I mean, in our case, to then get very specific about the individuals that you're partnering with, that you're working with, to be able to kind of represent, you know, the proper business model that you had tried to represent early on? Or do you think that once you're kind of deep in a process and in a mode of expansion, that it's something that you just have to continue and kind of approach on a need basis in terms of where there might be, you know, additional need for support, et cetera?
Well, that's a great question. And sometimes when you take on a partner that snowballs and gets a little bit out of control, sometimes you can keep up with it on the back end, but what it's going to do is it's going to put a huge stress and strain on your company internally to support whatever's going on with that partner, or sort of what I'll call the fray or the side effects of the situation. And I am all in favor of hitting the pause button. And the reason for this is to have the right locations and to have the right business model and to have the right profit numbers and to actually, from a revenue standpoint, be truly profitable. You know, you're going to have to baseline set that at some point. And the companies that proceed with the snowball method and try and keep up on the back end, sometimes you get through the grinder on the other side and you're doing okay. Other times it actually drastically affects their existing client base, the good ones, over time. And you will find that it just dilutes your entire product and the clients that you were looking to acquire in the first place. So I'm more a fan of hitting the pause button, but that's also a discussion that maybe you need to have with some of your investors to make sure that everyone's bought in. Because if there's dissension, meaning if some don't feel that way, then then you're going to have some issues there.
Definitely. Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Well, very good. We've come to the end of our hour and a half. Carrie, thank you so much. This has been a brilliant conversation and actually gave me a lot of food for thought on some of the things I want to do with the companies that come through the Preccelerator. So thank you very much. It was excellent content.